Okay, good evening. Thank you all for being here. I will make this quick because you did not come to hear from me, I'm fairly certain. There is so much happening in the region, as you all know. We thought of okay, what's the best way to bring Joel and Lynn into this conversation? So we're going to do it as kind of a question and answer. So most frequently asked questions that we've received, questions that I believe are probably in your mind and heart as well, to talk about not only the geopolitics of what's happening, but how the Lord is actually moving and changing lives in the epicenter. And when we say the epicenter, Israel, but also that surrounding region as well. And so we're not just talking about the Jewish community, we're also talking about the Arab community as well and how the Lord is moving and working. And so we'll try to make this fast-paced. We've never done this format before, so there could be a moment of awkwardness every so often. But what we're really excited to do is welcome Joel and Lynn Rosenberg. So Joel and Lynn, if you would come on up. So Joel and Lynn founded the Joshua Fund almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Just about 20 years ago now. And they continue to serve within the Joshua Fund as president and vice president. And Lynn also oversees our outreach directly in Israel as well. And so the goal is to bring what's really happening on the ground to you. Obviously, news says one story, and if you listen to 5 different news stories, you get 5 different perspectives. Joel and Lynn live in the country, have lived in the country for?
Well, we're coming up on 12 years as dual citizens. So that's been pretty crazy. 3 of our 4 sons have served in the Israeli military, and our youngest is just finishing his commander's school to command an IDF combat search and rescue unit, and that has really immersed us. Oops! Wow, I'm not doing well.
There go those awkward moments, like we mentioned, Lynn.
We had 2, and we're only 2 minutes in.
It's
all downhill from here. So that has really immersed us in this world. It's one thing to, go and visit. That's awesome, and we want you to do it. We'll talk about that tonight. Some exciting opportunities. But when you live there, and when you have to pay taxes there, and when you have to send your sons to the military, that really has changed it. Especially having a son in the military during the worst war since the War of Independence in 1948. So it's been very. This has been Israel's darkest hour, and the Palestinians as well. But God has opened so many doors. You'd never wish this on a people, but what man has planned for evil, God is absolutely using for good. We'll talk about some of the ways that those doors are opening and how people's hearts have been shaken so deeply. Religious people, but also non-religious people. And religious people saying, am I on the right team? And non-religious people thinking, I need a team. I can't do this by myself. And it's a very, it is exciting, but it's hard to say exciting in the context of war and terror and slaughter and darkness and spiritual darkness. So anyway, we'll talk about some of those things tonight. But it has been very different to actually be there day to day.
Okay, show of hands, how many people have read one of Joel's books?
Oh, and you came anyway. Wow. Thank you.
How many people have read one of Lynn's books?
That's not fair.
No, let me finish. Let me finish. Lynn edits every single one of Joel's books. So if you've read Joel's books, you've read Lynn's books.
And I've written a little bit of the female dialogue.
Yeah.
Because I say, a woman would never say that.
Yeah, so there will not be a gotcha moment about Lynn. Maybe about Joel, but there will not be a gotcha
We are
moment.
working on a book together, and we'll talk about that maybe if it comes up. But praise God.
How many are familiar with the Joshua Fund? How many are familiar with All Israel News? Okay.
So we got some work to do.
Okay. So Joel, you and Lynn live in Israel. You've taken delegations to Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, United Emirates is
UAE,
coming.
Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, Morocco.
Yeah, so you've been all over the place. You lead All Israel News. You lead the Joshua Fund, which serves Israel and her neighbors. But as we just saw, most people know you as the author, as the New York Times best-selling author. How did you become the president of the Joshua Fund, so connected and so passionate about the region?
Well, God has a sense of humor, I guess I would say. I am a failed political consultant. My first, 10, 12 years in Washington, D.C., we're helping candidates lose. I have a 100% track record of every single candidate lost. My last candidate was then former Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. He had been Prime Minister from 96 to 99. He lost. I wasn't involved in that one, but he had put together a comeback campaign team in the fall of 2000. I got hired onto that team, and he didn't go anywhere, at least not while I was around. And so at that point, I thought, I think my work here is done. I think I've given as much as I can to helping people lose. My friends started saying, don't you want to work for the other side next time? Maybe, help us out a little. So I started writing political thrillers. I thought, well, maybe I should just make things up for a living. I could do that. And and I also joke that I'm the one Jewish guy in America that didn't get the financial gene. I'm not your stockbroker, your hedge fund manager. And I'm also not a doctor or a lawyer. And I don't run a major motion picture company or even a minor one. So I pretty much didn't get any of the good Jewish jobs. So I just started making things up for a living, and that God used that. But as I started, as the novel started to connect with people, I would get invited to places. And at first, people didn't even think a guy named Joel Rosenberg would even know Jesus. So churches didn't invite me. Christian conferences didn't invite me at first. But as that happened, people would say, well, you write so realistically, almost prophetically, although I'm not a prophet, I'm not a psychic, I'm not a clairvoyant, right? I run a nonprofit, right? But I'm not a prophet. But basically what was happening is that as people would hear me talk about worst case scenarios that I was writing about fictionally, and how do I come around to that thought that might be a thing that might happen, people say, okay, but what really is happening? It's far more, in many ways, it's far more horrible than what you're actually writing about. And how can we make a difference as Christians? Like, what is God doing? Isn't he, where is he? And that was a very interesting question, but I would come home, and I want to pitch this over to Lynn. I would come home and go, I don't have an answer. I don't have a short answer for that question. It's not that we didn't know many, many ministries in the region. We'd spent a lot of time crisscrossing the region. But how do you summarize, at the end of a book talk, all the ministries that are doing amazing things? God is doing amazing things through them. If we just start giving a laundry list of ministries, these are too small to have websites. How is that really going to be edifying or helpful to the ministries or to the people I'm talking to? So I would come home and say, Lynn, we've got to pray. What am I supposed to say? What are we supposed to do?
Yes. And then we got invited to a conference in Canada, and Joel was sharing about the book and sharing the gospel through novels, and two different couples, unbeknownst to one another, came up to us separately and said, we think this book, Ezekiel Option, which very clearly shares the gospel, should be translated, one of them said, into Russian, because 1 in every 5 Israelis, their native language is Russian. And then this other couple came up and said, we want this book to be in Hebrew. And so tell us how much to write the check out for the translation. And we said we have no idea. So thankfully someone at that conference said, I know somebody in publishing, they can give us a quote, $30,000. That's what they came up with. So 2 different couples wanted to write us checks for $30,000 each. And we said, we don't have, you can't just write it to us. I mean, we don't have any organization. We can't give you a tax refund or tax receipt. And so the organization that had sponsored the conference said, we'll set up an account for you, we'll park the checks, you guys need to go home and start a nonprofit. We're like, oh, okay. So that's really how it started, was really, and that's one of the beautiful things about the Joshua Fund. It's been following the Lord. It's not like some grand idea we came up with. Our heart was to encourage the church in Israel and reach people with the gospel. We didn't know how to do that, but the Lord just kept showing us how to do that. So we did. We went home. We sat around our dining room table with friends from church that we'd been on many mission trips with and said, well, how do we bless Israel and her neighbors? Because at that moment, the Lebanon War of what year? 2006. I'm not the numbers person, so if I say any numbers tonight, do not believe me. I won't share numbers. I was an English major. Anyway.
That's why we run a fund.
Yeah, right. And this is, it's scary.
That's why we have people around us to help run a fund.
That's why we have great people like Lance helping us and Eve back there. Anyway, so we couldn't just hand people a book as they were taking missiles from Lebanon. So we started praying, Lord, how can we help them in practical ways? Anyway, that's how the Joshua Fund got started, that just around our table praying, Lord, what do we do? Yeah.
So then let's talk a minute just about, so what are some of those tangible and practical ways? I mean, a little bit back then, but really like tangible and practical, what's happening today? Like, what do you know that we all don't know because we live here in Orange County?
Well, I would say the first part of that answer is that it's a fund, right? So the primary ministry of the Joshua Fund is not to be a volunteer organization, though we are grateful when we're able to take some volunteers to help for this or that. But what we think of it as a venture capital fund from the board and senior leadership perspective, right? We're looking for, think of yourself up in Silicon Valley and you're a venture capitalist and you're thinking, I want to invest in, some 25-year-olds that are in their garage coming up with a new killer app, some new technology that's going to change the world and hopefully not ruin the world. And how can we provide not just funds, but management advice and, and operational guidance and maybe some marketing advice or whatever, and help them go from where they are with their great ideas to where they want to get to and where we want to get them to. So that's, in a sense, of the Joshua Fund. We're looking for ministries that are severely underfunded, under-encouraged, under-prayed for, not known, but we see the Spirit moving, and we get a signal from, after a lot of prayer, the Lord wants us to help. We don't want to just help somebody just because the Spirit's moving with them. If we don't want to get a phone call from Jesus, well, I do this little riff, and I'll just say it this way, and then I'll give the other half of this conversation. But so I say sometimes, like, remember the old Bob Newhart one-sided phone calls? So picture, I'm like, oh gosh, 1 second. This is the Apostle Peter. I just need to take this. Sorry, Lance. Well, just give me a second. Peter, hey, how are you? Wow, I can barely hear you. You've got a big crowd there. What's cooking? Oh, you're up in Galilee. Nice. And how many? There's 5,000 men at the Bible study? Whoa, wow. Women and children too? Well, no, I would expect that. But there's 5,000 men, you're saying? That's amazing. What did he ask you to do? He told you to feed them. Okay. Oh, you're serious? Oh, okay. Well, how are you going to do that? Oh, that's why you're calling. Sure. No, we would love to wire you some money. Absolutely. Joshua, that's what we're here for. What's your Venmo? Okay. Done. All right. Give me just 5 minutes and you'll have the money. Wow. No, it's such an honor. Peter, super to help you. Are you kidding? Tell Jesus, hey. All right. Love you guys. All right. Bye. And now we're chatting and everything. And then suddenly in just a few moments, oh, sorry, this is Jesus. Just give me 1 second. Yeshua, hey, how are you? Love you too. Wow, yeah. Yes, Peter just called and we just sent the money. Well, you didn't want me to send the money. But Peter said that, no, I know Peter says stuff, but he's on your team. Isn't he the leader of the pack? Well, no, you're the leader of the pack. No, I totally get. Well, no, I didn't call you. I didn't want to bother you. I just thought that if I know he says stuff. Right, but you didn't. Oh, I see. You were trying to do a miracle without our money. Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to get involved or interfere. Please forgive me. Yeah, okay. All right. Love you too. Talk to you later. Bye. Oops. You can vet a ministry, and it can be the right ministry. God can be totally in it. The Spirit's moving, but he may not want the Joshua Fund to be the one that comes in and is the answer to the prayer. We have to be very careful of that. Yes, obviously we're vetting for lunatics and heretics and, charlatans. Yeah, those are the easy ones. But to have this discernment to know how much, when, that's a challenge. And then we have certain areas that we invest in as a ministry.
Yeah, I would say we have our humanitarian aid department. So we have 24 different distribution centers in Israel that are all through local churches, where we have some pillars to make sure that when we're talking to a local church about if they want to do a humanitarian aid center, they have to have the same heart, which is that these gifts of aid are for the purpose of building a relationship which will lead to the gospel. We want to make sure that people aren't going to hell, well-fed, and we want to make sure that the same heart that we have to get the gospel to people is in the heart of these churches. And so we actually don't do huge food distributions. We do pretty small food distributions, say 100 families or 150 or something like that. Sometimes it's 30, because we go to the churches, we train them to go to their homes, to sit and have a visit. So once a month, it's really getting to know people and sitting together, honoring them, letting them host you and give whatever little they have, a cup of tea, a cup of coffee. It makes such a huge difference. And we've seen through these humanitarian aid distribution centers amazing gospel opportunities. We have to, yes, I'm going to say, okay. We have to follow the law. So there are two very clear laws in Israel about evangelism. One is you cannot give someone food and the gospel at the same time. So, or any kind of aid. So you can, if they, like a soup kitchen, like say in America where everyone comes into a room and you give everyone free soup, and then while they're eating, you tell them the gospel. Can't do that in Israel. So, but you can tell them this is done in the name of Jesus. You can do it through the local church that lives in that town. You can ask them if they want you to pray for them, and so they know that you're followers of Jesus. And maybe after the first month or the second month, they start to wonder, well, why? And you can answer their questions. If they initiate the conversation, you can say, you know what? Let's get together later this week when I'm not giving you food, or come to. We do evangelistic bus tours where we take people from congregations. A lot of people in Israel have never seen Israel, have never seen the Bible sites. So we'll take them, or haven't gone to Jerusalem. So we'll do evangelistic bus tours where we can take them, maybe they have to pay a very small amount, but then they get a whole day trip and they hear the gospel. So we can tell them the gospel in a different setting, but it can't be with food or aid. The second thing is you can't be an adult and tell the gospel to a child. Children to children, totally fine, but not adult to children. And so you can't have a VBS and invite the whole neighborhood, for instance. In fact, if, say, your child has a friend from school that wants to come to VBS, you have to get the parents to sign a permission slip and say, I understand this is a messianic, this is a Christian thing, and I'm giving my permission. So those are the two laws we're very careful to obey. But the heart is to have really authentic relationships. And so we try to do things in a very small way and grow as capacity grows. Then the other thing we do besides humanitarian aid, and also within that, there's two pro-life ministries that we help, which is really exciting. You'd be surprised how much abortion is in the Holy Land. Very sad. Even the IDF gives prepays it sometimes was 2 and it sometimes is 3. They've changed over the years, abortions to women in the service. They just expect that this is something that they're going to do. it's unbelievable. So there's some amazing pro-life ministries that we partner with also in Israel. And then our other department is called Special Projects Israel, which is what I'm currently the interim director of, and looking forward to handing it over to some wonderful other person. But I'm really honored to do it for now. And that is, we're looking to invest in the church. So we are doing direct investment into evangelistic opportunities, the Bible Society and some of their projects. We do a big conference that Lance is amazing to help us with every year, where the majority of pastors and ministry leaders and their spouses come. And we treat them to 3 or 4 days of time away and hearing God's word and just being with each other. It's like a big wedding party.
And we teach through the Bible.
Yeah.
First year we did, I think it was 1 Thessalonians. We've done James. We've done, we went through the entire book of Acts. It took us many years to do it. But we're modeling inductive Bible study and expository preaching. Those are not things that are deeply rooted in the culture in Israel and all the congregations, but they have really loved it. And many pastors have said, can you come back and teach us how to do that? That's we've never even seen that done. That's a great way to teach. And then I don't need to know what I need to teach on next week because it's just the next section. Exactly. And I get to cover all the topics. Exactly. And I don't have to just stick with my hobby horses. Exactly. And it seems to really feed people and change people. Exactly. So that's exciting to be able to, and that's the only Bible conference annually that there is one that the pastors asked us to do 13 years ago or so.
Yeah. We also do scholarships for young people to go to Bible college. We worked with the only Bible college in the country and helped them develop a women in ministry program, which was really exciting that I got to be actually a part of on their staff. So yeah, we are trying to equip the church to in the epicenter to reach and to accomplish the Great Commission. So we're not really a Joshua Fund. We don't put our name on anything. We're just sort of coming in and sitting and listening and hearing what God's doing and seeing how we can help.
So that's humanitarian and sort of the special projects. The two other areas is neighbors. So Palestinians, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Egypt, and most recently Iran. How do we strengthen the churches there? How do we train Muslims who've come to faith in Christ, need to be discipled, and need to be trained up to be shepherds so they can invest in underground churches? It gets very little attention, very little funding, very little focus. This is sort of the niche that God has called us into. And then education and strategic initiatives. This is the areas of how do we educate and equip the global church to learn, to pray, to give, and to go. And Lance came on. Lance had been one of our senior leaders on the executive level a number of years ago, then came back to work with a church here in Southern California, and then about a year and a half ago-ish came back on board full-time to be the director of our strategic initiatives, and he'll talk about that in a little bit, but just how do we take what we're doing and find new allies and new ways to help the church understand. There's such a direct attack right now, not just by Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens and all the rest on the extreme right, also on the left, but also among Christians who are really confused, uneducated in these areas about Israel and God's heart for Israel, or they've just become arrogant, as Paul warned in Romans. Don't go there. Don't become conceited. Don't think God is done with the Jews. Don't think that God is done with Israel. And yet that's really not just advice. It's prophecy that was going to happen. And it's happened over the years. It's certainly happening now. So this is a big area. This is probably primarily where I focus on whether it's relatively small groups like this or tours or summits or conferences. We do a podcast, etc. We'll talk about other areas. That's a lot to ask. What does the Joshua Fund do? Well, that's a smidgen.
Okay, let's pull on the thread of, here in America, you're either pro-Israel or you're pro-Palestinian. Mm-hmm. You're either Israel owns the whole land and the Palestinians, they need to leave, or you're Israel is a big bully, they have all the guns, they're doing everything, the Palestinians are right. So leaving the geopolitics aside, how you're Jewish by all accounts, and a believer.
Name like Joel Rosenberg. I didn't even know I was Jewish till the 5th grade. You're like, you must have been the dumbest kid in the class. Absolutely. That's a different story for a different time. But yeah.
But you talked about let's talk about both and, not either or. The conversation is both and, not one or the other.
Right from the first few minutes of the conversation that Lynn and I were having, and with the prospective board that we were putting together, we knew that the Lord was calling us to minister on both sides. Now, yes, we were probably going to focus primarily on Israel. Maybe 80% of our funding was going to focus on Israel and Jews, but we really believed fundamentally, theologically, this had to be a both-and ministry. God doesn't only love one side. But most ministries feel only called to serve one side or the other, and we are not critical of that. And we understand after 20 years why they choose one side or the other. And again, not to necessarily be against the other team, although sometimes they are, but because it's the spiritual warfare involved in one set of ministries is exponentially worse when you're trying to do both. So, but we are trying to model Jesus' love. And you'd say, well, Jesus came and he said, he told his disciples at first, only go reach that lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's what I'm called to. That's what you're called to. Right? That's true. That's what he said. But then he went to Lebanon. And you're like, and they're like, Lord, what are you doing in Tyre and Sidon? Like, you're in Lebanon, but and this Syrophoenician woman screaming at you for mercy. Tell her to be quiet. And Jesus, obviously he didn't do that. And then he went to Jordan, right? And so obviously to finish that story, you know it, but he did heal the Lebanese woman's demon-possessed daughter, right? It's true that there was a season that he was coming first to present the kingdom to the Jewish people. Unfortunately, most Jews rejected him, right? He came to his own, but his own received him not, mostly. But to as many who did receive him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, even to those who believe in his name. So, but he was signaling, he was modeling, and he was certainly saying to the disciples, it's not going to be just the house of Israel forever. I'm about everybody. For God so loved the world, right? Go make disciples of all nations, right? I don't need to remind you, but for them, they just did not compute this. Then he goes to Jordan, right? And he's healing demon-possessed people that are hanging out in caves and everything. And the people in Jordan are so upset that they beg him to leave. That's a very sad response to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. But so it's both and. And I would say that one of the biggest challenges we're finding, you're probably aware, certainly those of you that read All Israel News or listen to the podcast, what have you, but others may be aware that the number of young evangelicals who believe that God loves Israel and that we should be a blessing to Israel and the Jewish people, that is plummeting. The Joshua Fund has actually done some of those significant polls that are showing this, and we're continuing to track the story. There's a number of reasons why this is happening, but one of them, we believe, is that young people are hearing from some of the strongest voices, Christian voices for Israel, a one-sided story. And when you're watching, certainly after October 7th, when you're watching death and destruction in Gaza, but you're only hearing Israel, 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 we need to stand with Israel, we love Israel. That's not wrong. It's not incorrect, but it's incomplete. If people say, but my sympathies are with the Palestinians, they should be with people are suffering. And so we've been trying to teach and model for 20 years, God loves both sides. How do we do it? How do we serve the church to reach their people on both sides? And it's complicated, right? Just the Israelis and the Palestinians, that's super complicated. Add in Lebanon, add in Syria, add in Jordan, Iraq, Egypt, and now Iran. The languages, the cultures, the spiritual warfare is off the charts. But we really do believe this is the right way to go, as hard as it is and as much as it's a lightning rod for spiritual warfare, off the charts. never seen anything like it. But it's also important, and it's fruitful. And so we can honestly sit with young people, as we have, and say, you're not wrong. You're right to care for the Palestinians. The question is, what's your plan to reach them with the gospel? Okay, you're not happy about Israel right now. We can talk about that. Israel has certainly made decisions that we're not happy with. You're not happy with. I got that. But let's focus, you as a Christian, young Christian, what is the plan? What's the heart? Or do you just want to castigate Israel and the Jews, Netanyahu, or do you want to be part of making a difference, an eternal difference? And if you can turn that frustration and sympathy over here, frustration over here, into something workable, eternal, gospel-driven, I think we can help. Because if you're thinking, I'm not sure how to do that, but I'm not sure you're wrong, Joel or Lynn or Lance, but how do I do that? Okay, well, we've got ways. And that's encouraging. Not easy work. Do you want to add, subtract, multiply, or divide to that?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
So as they talked about the pastors' conference that we do annually, that is with
Arab Israelis, Jewish Israelis, yeah, both. And then we also do the same conference on the Palestinian side. We haven't been able to do that in the recent years because of security issues, but as many of them that can get permission to come across the border and join us at the conference, we do that. We have the worship time is all in Hebrew, but one night we do an Arab worship concert for all the Arab believers that are there. We do translation into Arabic, Russian, and what am I?
Hebrew, because we're
Hebrew,
speaking
right? Because
English.
we're speaking in English. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's 3 booths back there.
Right.
Yes. So I would just say, I believe there's something supernatural that happens when a Jewish believer in Jesus shares the gospel with their neighbors and their enemies, because that's what they were created to be, a light to the nations. And it's an amazing thing to see those walls come down, that one new man happen. That's the only hope we have, is in Jesus for peace. Yeah.
Yeah. That, by the way, that annual retreat is called Preach the Word / Shepherd the Flock. That's the focus, is to equip, to refresh, to encourage pastors who are giving, and their wives, who are sometimes, if it's a congregation of 50 people, 75 people, right? Wife, mom is also the head of Sunday school ministries, head of youth ministries. She's head of women's ministries. She may not have had any training at all. She's probably exhausted. Her husband's exhausted. He doesn't have a secretary. Like, it's, sometimes we have a different context of life here, although a ministry, like, they don't even have a building often. Or they rent, and then their ultra-Orthodox neighbors are trying to get rid of them, or their Muslim neighbors are trying to get... So it's... these people need refreshment, and they don't have the resources. Most of them, if they often... These ministries are so small, dad/pastor is working a full-time job, like, very much like the Calvary world. So, if you're not a mega pastor, but at the same time, they're often they feel they have to travel extensively to raise the funds for the ministry. So they might be on the road a third of the year, half the year. It's hard to be a good shepherd when your flock doesn't know where you are, or hasn't seen you for a third or half of the year. So one of the things Joshua's trying to do, prayerfully, led by the Spirit, right? We don't want to be in charge of their ministry or have them to be dependent on us entirely, but how can we relieve a little bit of that burden so they can be home with their family, with their congregation, be that good shepherd that congregation really needs. So that's one of the most special elements of our year, and it has helped unify. It wasn't our idea. A lot of pastors said, would you do this? Because there are no denominations in Israel, but there's a lot of differences, right? 2 Jews, 4 opinions, right? So you got all those congregations.
In the Messianic world, there's not denominations.
There's not really denominations.
In the Arab world, there are.
Yeah, right, that's true. And even though there may not be denominations, okay, there's very conservative and there's hyper-Pentecostal and everything in between, right? So pastors, we can't really hold our own national pastors and wives retreat because nobody would come. Because, that's your team. Well, that's... And so they asked us as trusted outsiders, if you guys host this and then don't invite us to speak. Some of them asked to be invited, but others said it would be better if you didn't have us speak, because then how did he get invited? How come I didn't get invited? How come he's saying, just come to refresh us and maybe not ask us to do anything? And we would ask them, but we agreed with that heart, and that has proven itself to be very, very refreshing and very fruitful and unifying.
Okay, so a little context here. How many Messianic congregations are there in the nation?
She doesn't want to say numbers, so I'll say there's about 300 to 350.
Exactly.
And
so in the whole country?
In the whole country, right? So imagine having almost every pastor in the country at the retreat. The impact is just amazing. And then there are so there's about 20, there's different numbers, two different studies, but there's between 20 and 30,000 Messianic Jewish believers in the country. Or Lynn's not Jewish, but she'd still count. She's married to me. We've Jewish sons, that type of thing. So 20 to 30,000 on the Jewish believing side. And then there's another 4,000 to 5,000 Arab Israeli citizen evangelicals. They're not Palestinian citizens, they're Israeli citizens, but they're evangelicals, and so, mostly small Baptists and other types of churches.
How big is the whole population? When you mention those numbers.
Well, the population of the country is 10 million, right? So that's not that many, and you can see that's a pretty small percentage. Now, if you talk about historic churches, Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, Armenian, and others, there's probably about 200,000 people in the country, roughly, that would say that they are followers of Jesus. They're not Muslims. They're not Jewish. How many of those are born again? There are some, but those numbers I just gave you, the 20 to 30,000 and the 4,000 to 5,000, that's pretty much what we're talking about. Aside from expatriate, people, Mike Huckabee and Janet Huckabee, right, our ambassador and his wife, they're believers. They're not citizens, but, so where do they show up in the numbers? They don't really, but there's another several thousand people who are embassy people, NGO people, military people who love Jesus, yeah.
Now, how about the West Bank?
Well, the West Bank is, now you're talking about 2.5 to 3 million Palestinian residents, let's say. They don't have a sovereign country. Gaza is about 2 million people. Gaza, we're down to probably 50 evangelicals, maybe, that are still survived or haven't fled the country. In the West Bank, what we would say Judea and Samaria, but let's say West Bank to honor our Palestinian friends. That's what they call it. That's maybe about 1,500 evangelicals. So there are, we believe, about 30,000 Palestinian evangelicals in the world, but most of them have, for economic issues, for opportunity issues, for persecution issues, whatever, have left, and they live in the United States or Europe or the Gulf. So it's interesting, there's roughly parity between the Messianic Jewish world and the Palestinian believing world, but most of the Palestinian true believers in Jesus have left the country, and Messianic Jews are sort of inbound and growing. So, but how do you build trust with people who have strong disagreements and understandable disagreements? Maybe their house was taken over, maybe their kids were hurt by an Israeli military campaign or whatever. So this is taken a lot of time, and we don't ask people to become a Zionist to be ministered, for us to fund them, encourage them, but we're not trying to change the theology of the Palestinian believers to believe in that God has a biblical plan for the rebirth of the state of Israel. We would love that, but that is not. We're there to encourage, support, love, and strengthen them as believers in Jesus, as lovers and teachers of the Word of God, and try to keep our mandate, our mission limited. That's challenging enough. Is that?
Okay, so Lynn, most of your life is spent here in America, and for the last 12 years you've lived in Israel.
Yes.
What do we need to know here in America about the people of Israel? What's one of the things that surprised you the most, or what do you wish that we knew?
I think probably the main thing that I would love you all to know is that Israelis are very, very curious people. that you should not ever be afraid to talk to them about the gospel. They love to talk. They love to talk in general. They love to give you their opinion. And so you don't have to be shy about giving your opinion. And don't give them your opinion, but give them what you know about the Word of God. They really are so open. And that hasn't always been the case, but in the last 20 years or so, that is the case. And so,
not because of the Josh Fund. I think
No.
God just happened to raise this up at a similar time that he was starting to open hearts and minds.
we're not seeing a huge harvest yet, but we're seeing the softening. We're seeing the opening of hearts. And so it's really exciting to be able to talk to people. In fact, since October 7th, in that first year after the war, the number one Googled word by Israelis was Psalms, which is really neat. Not news or Gaza or Hamas or something like that, but Psalms. So we know that God is starting to move, that the Holy Spirit is moving, and there's this openness. So when you meet an Israeli that comes around, if you hear Hebrew, just be bold and talk to them. They love to talk. They're very, they're called sabras. So a sabra is the fruit in Israel. It's a cactus fruit. So you'll see these sabra plants all over Israel, and so this became the nickname of a native Israeli. They're called a sabra. Why? Because the fruit is very prickly on the outside, but on the inside it's very sweet. And this is a great picture for Israelis. They might seem a little, aggressive. They might seem a little hardened. They might seem a little skeptical.
How they drive. That's aggressive.
Oh, you finally admit that it's bad.
I totally
When we
admit.
moved to Israel, Joel was wearing rose-colored glasses, and he was like, "It's such a joy to be here. We live in Israel." And I'm like, "These people are the worst drivers I've ever seen in my life." He's like, No. There's other people that are bad drivers, but after 12 years, you've come around. They are terrible drivers, very aggressive, very aggressive.
It's like they're all tank drivers, and they're all on the Sinai or
But
something.
I'm from New York, New Jersey, so I kind of like it. It's kind of exciting to be out there on the road with them. But anyway, the other thing, about Israelis is that they would do anything for you. They're the most loyal people. It's amazing. Like, for instance, I was just walking down the street in Jerusalem about 4 years ago and thinking, what a beautiful day. I literally was looking at the birds and the flowers, and I was thinking, what a beautiful morning. Shoop! Right at that second, I fell through a manhole cover that was loose. And people just came running. People came running, and they lifted me out of the manhole cover, and they brought me water, and they took care of me. It's just
They
amazing.
insisted that you sue.
They insisted that I sue the municipality. Yes.
Didn't do it, but
Which I did not do, but I did go to the police station and report that there's a loose manhole cover, because what if that was like an older person? They could have broke a hip. I might have.
I like that
broken
we feel like we're not older people. But
I'm
anyway,
so young.
She-
But it's amazing. Just there, especially when we lived in Washington D.C. for 24 years, and I'm a firstborn, and I'm kind of a Type A person. I feel like I can accomplish a lot of things. When I got to Israel, I suddenly became like a 4-year-old, or maybe like a third grader in my ability to do things. So it was very humbling, but a great way to trust
Language
the
and
Lord.
logistics
Right?
and everything was
Didn't know how
just-
any process worked.
Yeah.
So. But I'm telling you, I would just stand at the grocery store in front of a wall of unknown cheeses and spices, and I would just say, "Is there anybody that could help me?" And people just like, "Oh, sure." I mean, they're just the most helpful, loyal people that you'll ever want to come across.
and by the end, she'd say, "Praise cheeses."
Oh, that's bad.
Maybe she didn't say that.
Same thing like in the post office, I would say, "I don't know how to fill out this form." Just people are super loyal and helpful. So, yeah.
And that inquisitiveness we're seeing is now shaken by the horrific events of October 7th and so forth, really is now coming to, people are looking, people are searching, and there's been one of the projects we invested in early on was when the Bible College said, would we start funding them creating short form 7 or 8 minute testimonies in Hebrew of Israeli Jews who'd come to faith in Jesus, right? Why would they do that? Because, if you're an Israeli and you're kind of curious, where are you going to go? Most of the churches are Roman Catholic or Greek Orthodox, the ones that you see that have a steeple, that have tourists, but they may not know Jesus there, right? I mean, it's possible, actually likely there. So where are you going to go? So you're going to go online. So we noticed back in the day, the Israelis at that time were Googling Mashiach, Messiah, 134,000 times a month. we thought. Well, what are they getting? So we started funding the Bible colleges. They started building websites and then short form videos to tell the story, so that these are the things that you would find. And just as an example, those Hebrew language testimony videos have now been seen 150 million times. Now, there's not obviously 150 million Hebrew speakers in the world, right? There's about 10 million. So what's happening? Well, there's many videos, and these are like Pringles. You can't eat just one, right? You watch one, you're like, an Israeli unbeliever goes, there's no way this guy, what? Look, this guy says he believes in Yeshua. What? That's crazy. No, come on. Well, he's an anomaly. No, there's like a list. Watch this, watch that. And then the Bible college said, would you start funding like apologetic videos that we can explain the answers, because it became an online war. The rabbis got furious, and they told young people, you were banned. You may not look at these videos. Man, we would have funded them to say that if we'd known, but they said it anyway. And so all young people started looking like, if the rabbis say don't do it, let's go find out what's going on. So then the rabbis started creating videos to counter. And so we had to fund videos to counter the counters, and it was like a big Wimbledon match. I'm mixing my metaphors. That's been exciting, and that's the groundwork that's got laid prior to October 7th. So now a lot of people have heard the gospel. Now they're trying to match it with the world they live in, and they're starting to think more seriously. It's not just a curiosity. Now they're starting to think, is this really true? Mm-hmm. So we haven't seen I believe that the fields are white for harvest. We do see people come to faith, but they're coming to faith much faster in Iran or communist China than they're coming in Israel. But we can see over 20 years, we can see a significant shift, and especially in the last 2.5 to 3 years, something really, most of the pastors right now and their wives are exhausted, not just because of wartime, but because they're sharing the gospel all the time and explaining answers to these people's questions, and they're like, something is going on. Just without going on too far on this, although I love this part of the topic, we were just in Galilee, and you went to go visit a couple, and they said they're starting to see real movement, like people starting to come to faith.
Yeah. So the Bible Society asked us a few years ago, they said, we have this couple, they just have a gift of evangelism. They're kind of like hippie evangelists. They just take their van and they just pray, and then they just go
and Bill Welch just going around.
They just go different places and share the gospel. Would you help make that possible? Would you help give them their salary? So we prayed about it and felt like that was something the Lord wanted us to do. So yeah, I just sat with them about a month ago, I guess, in their little apartment in the Galilee, which they're not in very often, but they happened to be home at that time. And they said, Lynn, the Lord is moving. The Holy Spirit is starting to open people's eyes. They said it's like we just sense the wave is coming, like we're going to start to see a harvest. They said actually the people that we try to approach are more bold with their questions than we even are, and they're bold, with our sharing the gospel. One of the things they do, there's a historic church in Jaffa, which is just south, like kind of part of Tel Aviv, just south of Jaffa. And it's a place that tourists like to go to, Israeli tourists like to go to. So they actually just hang out there twice a week. And they've baptized just in the last year 4 Jewish people who've come to faith they come to the church and they kind of show them around and they just start talking and they share the gospel with them, and they're really starting to see people come to faith. So it's very, very exciting. One of the things that we helped, a tool to put in their hands, they said we want to go down to the Gaza border communities where they've seen such horror, and there's something called resilience centers, which the Israeli government set up in various communities. So it's kind of like a clearinghouse almost, or like a community center for helping people that have been through trauma. So there's counselors, there's people for your kids, there's art therapy. They just try to bring as much help into these little resilience centers as they can. So they found this book, a trauma counseling book that's for lay people, just a very small little book that was written in English by the Bible Society in America. They said, we want to translate this into Hebrew. We want to make sure all the scripture is from from the Hebrew Bible, so it'll be acceptable. But we'll put that it's from the Bible Society with our website, so they can come and they can learn more by doing that. And so they went to every resilience center on the Gaza border, And not only were they welcomed with open arms, and they said, yes, we want to give these books out to people. So these resilient centers are giving out the Bible Society books, which is amazing. They said, come and sit and just talk to the people that have come for counseling. We would love you to just sit with them. So it's been really, really exciting to see the open doors. People have been shaken, and they have these questions, and so it's really exciting. Yeah.
Okay, a bit of a subject change. So a question that came in from somebody who's here. We have a whole younger generation that is being impacted, brainwashed by media outlets and have become anti-Israel. Besides the Bible, where can they go for truth?
Yeah, well, this is one of the reasons we are really developing and building out our educational side, and this is one of the reasons we asked Lance to come back onto the team and to develop strategic initiatives. So there's several ways. So one way is we've started several years ago a podcast, and that has become a real way for people to have a little bit longer form response to these type of questions. That's been encouraging. Secondly, TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network, which is the most watched Christian television network in the United States, asked me several years ago to do a weekly primetime half-hour news and analysis show. And that has given us a chance to go spotlight a lot of Israeli pastors, ministry leaders, ministries in the last few years on the front lines of these wars. What are they teaching? What are they seeing? What is God doing? We also get an opportunity to interview the president of the country or Ambassador Huckabee or whatever, and we sort of mix a combo platter of geopolitical and spiritual ministry. That's another area, and sometimes we take those shows and turn those into podcasts. We have All Israel News, and we also have All Arab News, but the more dominant, the most watched, most read version of that is All Israel News. What is that? That is, okay, if you're thinking, I'm not going to pay attention to CNN or NBC or BBC or whatever, I don't trust the mainstream media, I don't trust social media much, but where should I turn? So about 6 years ago, almost 6, several Israeli believing colleagues and I launched the first ever Israeli believer-run news service. And I said, listen, I don't want you to focus on traffic, on readership, on viewership. We have a YouTube channel that goes with it. That's more for the young people, but others too. But I said, your mission, should you choose to accept it, this mission impossible of educating people, is your job is to do the exact opposite of everything the mainstream media does that you hate. Okay, I don't know if any of you are Seinfeld people. There was a show an episode I loved once called where George Costanza, who's the idiot of the show, and Jerry's always getting him to do ridiculous things just for his own pleasure, and to tease him about it as a comedian. And George slumps into the booth at the coffee shop one day. He goes, my life is a disaster. Every decision I've ever made, what I wear, what I eat, what I read, whatever, it's all been wrong. And Jerry says, well, if every decision you've ever made is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right. And George goes, yes, that's true. Like, it's completely ridiculous, right? I mean, how do you make a decision the opposite of you eat a tuna fish sandwich every day? What's the so anyway, but in the show, George starts making the opposite of every instinct, and he gets the girl, and he gets the job with the New York Yankees, and everything's going really, really well. It's a pretty funny show for very lost people. Hashtag just saying. But I said to our team, look, your job is to, this is the George Costanza doctrine. You hate what the New York Times does? Do the opposite. You hate what CNN does? Do the opposite. And your job is to build trust. Every single day, in small ways and large, you're building trust. And so, for example, when the New York Times runs an 8-column, massive, top-of-the-fold headline that says Israel attacks Palestinian hospital in Gaza, and every media outlet in the world runs with it because it's the New York Times, just take a breath. Do the opposite. Let's just wait a couple of hours and see if the IDF confirms it. We'll write about it if it's really happened and it's bad for Israel. It's still, if it happened, it happened. We're going to tell the truth. But that doesn't sound right. And everybody that's cited in this news article is from the Palestinian Health Ministry. That's Hamas. That's like saying the Nazi health ministry is saying that the United States was killing a bunch of Jews at Auschwitz, and just running with that. And you're like, that doesn't sound right. Let's just let's find out more. So, of course, sure enough, there was video that Israel's intelligence service released of an Palestinian missile going up, misfiring, falling on the hospital blows up. And then radio intercepts of Palestinian Hamas operatives going, was that us? Yeah, that was us. Let's say it's the Israelis. That type of thing. And pretty soon we're telling a different story, but we're running upstream against traffic, but we're telling the truth. Now, if the truth was bad for Israel, we'll tell it. We're about truth. That's what Jesus says, to be about truth. He's about truth. He is the truth. But what we're finding over time was we had very low traffic in the early years, 1 million to a year. Then came 68 million just in 2024. And that was the peak of the war. We're probably at, I can't remember the exact numbers, 35, 40 million views in this past year. Because people are starting to find us and they're beginning to trust us. And we're covering everything. And we're covering stuff that wouldn't get covered by the mainstream media. But we're also covering the stuff the mainstream would cover, but we're doing it right. We're doing it well. And Christians are beginning to go, these are believers. And we can trust them. And that takes time. And we can lose your trust instantly if we do something stupid. So we're really trying to create something. We cover believers and we cover unbelievers. And we had to make sure it wasn't a missionary site. Now, there are plenty of articles about people preaching the gospel and people coming to faith and all those things. But to make sure that the president of the country would talk to us, or the prime minister would talk to us, or the foreign minister would talk to us, as well as Arab leaders, we had to make sure we were really a true journalistic enterprise. And it's been amazing how many opportunities. The foreign minister gave us the first interview that he gave upon becoming the foreign minister. For 7 years, I've been advocating that Israel appoint an Israeli ambassador to the Christian world. There's no ambassador that's ever had that portfolio. There's 2.5 billion Christians, but nobody's got that mandate. So I've been talking about it, trying to build support for it, encourage it. Well, Israel just did it, because that foreign minister that I did the interview with, I asked him, and he said, absolutely, that's a great idea. And it took a little time to find the right person, but I got the first interview with that new guy. And so this is the type of thing we're doing, and we're so encouraged. So just so you know, allisraelnews.com. allisraelnews.com. And as you pull it up, you'll find a little pop-up. It costs you nothing, but you can put in just your email address. We're not asking for other personal information. This will give you, every day when you wake up, all the news has already happened in Israel, because you're 10 hours off, right? So you'll get an email when you wake up. The main headlines are all hyperlinked. You can just scan the headlines and you'll be more informed than you were before. And you can click on the ones that you find interesting. Mm-hmm. And we're just finding this is just starting to grow into something people are like, okay, Dad, it helps me know how to pray better and understand what's really, really happening in the country and the region. We've been invited to meet with Arab leaders, Muslim leaders, all throughout the region. I'm invited to go to Saudi Arabia in a few weeks, and so we'll be covering that. So anyway, just that's the short version of one of the most exciting elements. Joshua Fund is a major investor, as it were, nonprofit, into All Israel News, because it helps expand our ability to educate in a wide variety of ways.
And there's a new book coming.
There's a new book coming.
Yes, that's true.
Would you like to give the?
Yeah, sure. We're co-writing our first book together, which is a nonfiction book that is right now, the working title is Firestorm. Basically the war between. The war about, let's see, Joel's got the title down really well. Can you say the title?
Well, all right, it's a working title, but Firestorm. And we're saying what's true and what isn't in the white-hot war against Israel, Jews, and the Christians that love them both.
There you go.
This isn't just an attack from Tucker on the right or Bernie Sanders on the left or whatever. It's not just a war against Israel, and it's not just anti-Semitism. They are coming, mostly on the right, head-on into Christians whose theology is God has a plan for the Jews. He's not done with Israel. He's got a plan.
Yeah.
And you might not call yourself a Christian Zionist, or you might, but, Tucker Carlson saying that you're a heretic, that you've got a brain virus, that and so they're trying to blow up a Christian understanding of love and compassion and sympathy for Israel and the Jewish people.
Yeah. So the book is going to be basically every chapter title is going to be a question, like a question that people are asking these days about Israel. So they'll be from a geopolitical perspective, like questions like, is Israel really committing genocide? Did Israel drag America into this war with Iran? Questions like that. And then there's going to be the theological part of the book, which is really trying to answer all these supersessionist or replacement theology and say, did God reject the Jewish people because they largely rejected the Messiah? Well, no, may it never be. That's what Paul said. So theologically helping to strengthen those, the people that maybe are a little wobbly on their support biblically for what God says about Israel. So it's going to be a book that's sort of a resource book that you can use to help you answer questions that maybe younger people have or anybody has, because you think, no, I don't believe what you're saying, but I'm not feeling equipped to answer it well. So that's what the book will be for, to help answer those questions.
For parents, for grandparents, for pastors, for
but
yourselves.
Also with like
but
stories
also
too.
But also you can, with not just substance, the answers to these questions, but in a tone. Tone is very important, right? Jesus said in John 12:49, the Father commands me what to say and how to say it. Sometimes we can speak the truth, but we can say it with a tone that's shrill or arrogant or something, and is off-putting to the very people we're trying to win over, because we're really talking to the choir. I would say the choir's a little rusty right now and needs a little bit of a tune-up. But also, what about the son and daughter, grandchild of you guys? If you're thinking, well, I basically know that Israel is not committing genocide in Gaza, but I'm not sure how to tell Johnny or Sally. I'm not sure. I don't have the facts at my fingertips. This is not what I do every single day. But I don't. So I need a book that is. They might say, okay, I would like to know, and that they can go just to the question that they want answered, right? This is really important, and we're really working to try to. I mean, the problem is that we're trying to answer the most important and toughest questions, but they keep coming. The onslaught is horrific. But I would say this, and I would just want to note this specifically, because I think this, this feels like a very urgent and contemporary crisis, and it is. But let's be honest, this is, again, I mentioned this earlier, but the Apostle Paul, or maybe, I can't remember if I mentioned here or I was just with Bill Welsh on K-Wave, so I may have just said it there. But sometimes people, pastors, ministry leaders, Bible study teachers, neighbors, maybe they're saying they don't believe that current Israel has anything to do with biblical Israel, or these prophecies are not true. Maybe they just don't know. They just haven't been taught or taught well. So that's possible. But sometimes there's an arrogance. There's I don't want to believe that. I don't believe it. You shouldn't believe it. It's ridiculous. And there's an edge to it. And this is what the Apostle Paul warned of in Romans 11. He talked about, do not be arrogant, right, towards the branches, right, towards Israel. But if you are arrogant, remember that it's not you who supports the root, but the root supports you. So we need to be careful that as the church grows, there is a root. The root is Jewish, right? The Old Testament isn't over. This is God breathed. It's inspired and it's useful. And to say, you're talking about all Old Testament passages. When did those become verboten? I thought those were the passages that points to Jesus. So we only take the Messianic prophecies, the prophecies about the future of Israel. We don't listen to them. But that's an arrogance. There's an arrogance that's building. And Paul warned of it. He says, again in a moment, down in verse 20, do not be conceited, but fear. For if God did not spare the natural branches, okay, this in that context, that's Jews, that's Israel, he will not spare you either, right? So, and then all the verses that talk about, well, there's a partial hardening of the Jewish hearts, right? Until, well, what's the word partial for? What's the word until for? Unless there's a change coming, right? So all Israel will be saved. That's a future. All right, so the good news is in a world of 15 million Jews, about 1 million worldwide, mostly in the United States, now believe in Jesus. That's the highest number and the highest percentage in all of the last 2,000 years. This tells us things are cooking. This is exciting. But for people who are like, no, God's done with the Jews. He's done, that is arrogance. And it shouldn't be surprising. This was prophetic. But it also means we don't have to worry about it, but we do have to deal with it. Right? It's not going to divert God's plans. Nothing can thwart God's plans, right? That's what we know from Job. But it can do severe damage, as all bad theology can do. And one more point on this. So I mentioned earlier that one of the reasons we see that young evangelicals, people who say they're evangelicals, are turning against Israel is because they're seeing the damage and the devastation in Gaza. And they're deciding, well, Israel is Goliath, and I'm rooting for David, right? And they don't see people, if any, showing compassion for the Palestinians, so they make an emotional stand rather than thinking, you can believe that God loves Israel that's lost and loves the Palestinians who are lost, and we need to love them both and reach them with the gospel. But there's another reason, and that is a lot of young people just haven't been taught what God says in the Bible about Israel or the Jewish people, much less the neighbors. And if you're leading or attending a really good, solid congregation, and you're thinking, well, my pastor teaches from Genesis to Revelation, I'm getting really great teaching on what God, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the whole story. Okay, but is the Sunday school teaching that? Is youth group teaching that? In other words, when Paul tells in Romans, how can they believe if they haven't even heard? Right? That he's speaking about the gospel, but it's true of all important theology. If someone hasn't heard it, how can we expect them to believe it? So if you're attending a really great congregation, which you probably are, or definitely are, let's say definitely, you're here, maybe from another related congregation, but so you are, but we have to take stock. Do our kids know, are we imparting to our kids, as parents, as grandparents, or the pastors, are we sure that they at least have heard God's heart and plan for Israel? Because like a lot of biblical theology, people will say, well, what's the basic biblical story? Well, it's creation, fall, redemption, return. All that's true. But if you do an algebraic equation to take the entire Bible down to creation, fall, redemption, and return, while you're not wrong, you've just X'd out Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the 12 tribes, David, leading to the Messiah. That's a big story. Why does Paul say to the Corinthians, one of the most messed up churches, right? Look at Israel. Learn from Israel. Good and bad, right? Why does he spend all this time in the letter to the Roman church, right? The Gentile church, 3 chapters about Israel and about the Jews, because because he understands from the Spirit that people will reject. And he's saying, no, you need to learn from, you need to support, you need to understand God's not done. He's got a plan. So all this thing, we have got to be loading in this type of software. Now, young people can reject it, but if they're not even hearing it, then they may not be the ones at fault. As we need to take extreme ownership and think, I may have a little bit of fault in this. I was sort of outsourcing their biblical theology to church, which shouldn't seem wrong, but has risks. And young people are questioning everything on marriage, on life, certainly on Israel. And TikTok is spending a lot more time with your kids than you are. So how are we gonna handle that? And I'll stop there. That's why we're writing the book. That's why we do all this educational work. And that's why, among several reasons, why we asked Lance, could you come back and help us think through how to take what God has already been doing for 18 and a half years, and as we approach 20 years, which we're now at, how do we drive this deeper? How do we take this further? And he's been having some very creative ideas, and we're super grateful. He's putting a lot of hard work into this. And the challenge is more serious than ever. in our lifetime. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, time is not our friend.
Okay. We have all of eternity. But not tonight.
Okay, so briefly, here.
Must be a Lynn question then.
Okay, so we're in a ceasefire, but there's no ceasefire. I mean, there's a ceasefire sort of in Lebanon, but there's all sorts of stuff going on. You're doing a tour in a year.
Mm-hmm. You want to?
I think that's actually a
Actually,
good
okay.
question.
Okay, you can nudge me if I'm going too long. Okay, look, we are in somewhat of a ceasefire with Iran, right? And there's a lot of anxiety in Israel. What if President Trump gives up the ghost and makes a deal that's no good? And I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just saying, I'm the greatest president that has ever blessed the nation of Israel, and you all know it's true. I have a little confidence. No. I guarantee Lynn's sitting next to me going, not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent, not at this juncture, Joel. So anyway, there are a lot of spiritual forces trying to take some tremendously courageous actions that the president has taken to deal with his Iranian threat and bring it to naught. Okay, so we need to be praying. Hezbollah in Lebanon is actually intensifying, escalating in these recent days, and Israel has escalated in its retaliations. And President Trump is supporting Israel over here, doesn't want Israel to sort of re-engage with Iran yet, but there's a lot going on. The bottom line is, I believe this will be tied up in one way, shape, or form in the next few months, maybe weeks, but I don't want to. It's too volatile to put something specific. But we believe as a team that it's time for Christians, evangelicals particularly, to start planning to come back to Israel, because Israel needs that witness. The Joshua Fund has not done a tour or a conference in Israel in more than 7 years. It's felt like a tribulation. We've had COVID, right? That shut down the country. And then we've had almost 3 years of war. So Joshua Fund has brought in small groups of delegations of pastors, young pastors, and others. But we are planning our first real major tour for late March of next year with a one-day summit, an epicenter summit. Okay, Greg Laurie has agreed to speak.
They're coming, most of them.
And yeah, some of you guys have committed, and some of you are thinking, oh, I never heard of this before. So thank you for those who are coming. Although after this, you might be like, well, I'm not going. No, I hope you will. And I think what we need is to show it's going to be a witness. So it's not just us that haven't done a conference. No Christian organization has done a major conference there. How could we? We couldn't even get people in the country, much less out. So the Epicenter Conference Epicenter Summit will be April 7th, 2027. Greg Laurie, Skip Heitzig, Ann Graham Lotz, Jack Graham from Dallas, President of Israel, Isaac Herzog, who's been a wonderful friend, and we've had such a blessing of getting to know him and build a friendship and be a witness to him. U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee, the one with the brain virus, and the heretic, he'll be there speaking. I'll be speaking, and we've got a number of others we're not ready to announce yet that are sort of in motion. So I would love for you to come. Now you may say, well, that's crazy. You just said this thing is volatile, and okay, we won't actually do it if it's dangerous. But by next spring, I think Israel is going to be very quiet. I think where we're heading is where we're heading is that this war, as horrific and dark and horrible as it's been, is setting the stage for Gog and Magog. Meaning Israel's not only reborn as a country, check, and Jews are coming back into the land, check, but the early stages of Ezekiel 38, 39 is not just a Russian, Iranian, Turkish, etc. alliance against us. It's Israel living securely in the land. That means there's coming a window. I don't know if it's a year or two. It could be 5 years. It could be 20 years. Or we don't know. The text of the scriptures don't say how long that quiet is. But that quiet's coming. And I think that Iran may not be a clear, decisive victory. It may become Iraq. Right? Iraq, all my friends say, Iraq was a disaster. It's, what a total waste. Okay, well, from a U.S. national security perspective, is Iraq killing and capturing American citizens? No. Israelis? No. Are Gulf Arabs feeling endangered by Iraq? No. Did we get the Jeffersonian democracy maybe we were promised? No. It's a mess in Baghdad. But it's not a threat right now. It will eventually rise as Babylon and be horrifying, but we're not there yet. I think it's possible that Iran will become that mess, that it won't be a clean victory, but it might not be a threat for the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever. I say all that because I think it's time for believers who, with just a smidge of extra faith maybe than the average person, to go, I want to come, I want to show my solidarity with the nation of Israel, the people of, I want to hear from these pastors, I want to hear from these geopolitical leaders, I want to worship again in the land. I want to read the word. I want to pray. I want to be part of what God's doing, and I want to see it for myself. I want to see the church growing. I want to hear from people that can tell me, what is God doing? Because it's so exciting. And we can't do little groups like this that much because we live a long way from here. So that's why we're inviting people to come. And then, of course, we'll videotape it, and we'll put that on social media. But this Epicenter Summit and the tour that goes with it is very exciting. I want to encourage you, if you're already a part of a congregation that's saying, we're going, pray about going, signing up. And then if you haven't yet thought of that way, please do. And if I don't know who else is here, maybe you're a pastor from another congregation, consider coming. And maybe you'll say, my people aren't ready. Okay, why don't you go invite other pastors that you know and say, why don't you and your wife come, let's go on a little group. Let's either with the Joshua Fund or develop our own group. And maybe we take some young, youth pastors and Sunday school superintendents, or I'm not sure exactly your system so clearly, but let's use this conference, the summit, and this moment to understand what God is doing and be that remnant, because the church needs witnesses to come home to California, especially to California, to all, everywhere in the world, especially in the United States, to say, we've seen, we've heard, we know what God is doing. Let me share it with you. And so we're very excited. This is Lance is spearheading this whole effort, and it is quite an effort. But I think what we're very excited about, and the book, Firestorm, Lord willing, will release around then. It might come out just a little bit afterwards, but that'll sort of be the launch, and then we'll come back for a tour, Lord willing.
And so these, Eve, are back on the table here.
Oh,
so
yes.
it's information on the tour and the summit.
Joel, he's handing you something.
Oh,
Do you want to?
okay.
And so there's also more information on the Joshua Fund and the impact that the Joshua Fund and the team have had in Israel and her neighbors. We are at 8 o'clock. So
It's just the shank of the evening.
how many more hours, Pastor Bert? 3 more hours. Okay, so if anybody needs to go, we totally understand, but Joel and Lynn will be here for a few minutes. We can take some questions from people, so I would say if you need to leave, feel free to. We'll take a couple of questions. If anybody has any questions, I can't imagine there's any questions out there.
I think we covered everything.
Covered it all.
There's one there.
With regard to the Epic Center Summit Conference, where in Israel will it be? Because I'm not here now.
So it'll be in Jerusalem. It'll be at the Jerusalem Theater.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't announced that name yet, but yes, Jerusalem. We're not going to take you right up to the northern border or take you into Gaza. I mean, you can, that's the next tour.
That'd be exciting.
It's the on the track tour.
Yeah, there you go.
What's the difference between a Zionist and a Jew?
That's a great question. They're not synonymous. Jewish in the Bible, the difference between being Jewish and being a Zionist. So God is a Zionist. Zion is the name of the mountain that's right in the center of Jerusalem. And God says, I live in Zion. Zion's my home. I'm bringing my people back to Zion. The word is going to go forth from Zion. Zionism has been weaponized as a terrible, dirty word. And how could you be a Zionist? And Zionism is racism was an actual UN resolution for like 40 years. And it eventually got rescinded as they were like, oh, maybe not. So Jews who are Zionists, these are the people who moved back to the land of Israel before it was the state of Israel back in the late 1800s and all the way through the 1900s, and these were mostly secular people. Most of them were atheists or agnostics. God bless you. And they said, the Bible, we don't care about prophecy. We just need a homeland because we're going to get massacred, right? This was Theodor Herzl was the founder of Zionism. He had the first Zionist Congress in 1898, and he didn't believe in God at all. He didn't believe in the Bible. He didn't believe in prophecy. He wasn't a Calvary pastor. He was Jewish, and he said, I see a horror coming. We have got to have a place, and what better than the land of Israel? Let's come back. And within 52 years of that, Israel had a country. But a Christian Zionist is somebody who says, I do believe that Jews need a homeland and Israel should be that homeland, but I don't believe it just because this is what the scriptures say. This is what God promised. This is what he foreordained, and we should be supportive. That doesn't mean we have to support everything that Prime Minister Netanyahu says or does or anyone else in his government or any other government, any more than we have to agree with everything that Trump does or Biden does or whatever. We can call the balls and strikes as we see them. But that's what Christian Zionism is based on a biblical understanding. I would say that most Christians who love Israel don't actually call themselves Christian Zionists because they've been spooked away by the 50-year attack on Zionism as a political thing. But whether you call yourself that or not, if you believe the basic biblical understanding that God loves Israel, the Jewish people, has a plan to bring us back and resettle us, then that is Zionism, because that's what God said. But you don't need to necessarily hold on to that term. But not all Jews are Zionists. Forget the biblical side. Many Jews, especially American Jews, they don't support Israel. Bernie Sanders is Jewish. He is surely not a Zionist. He wants to defund all U.S. aid to Israel. He hates Israel, accuses us of genocide. Listen, just on that one, you don't even have to buy the book. That's probably not a thing I should say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Genocide, there's 2.2 million people living in Gaza. If Israel wanted to kill all of them, it would have been done already. We are the worst genociders on the planet in history of mankind. If after 3 years we can't kill everybody, we could do it in 5 minutes. But that's not our goal. And you'll see when you get to the book how many ways we have literally the numbers of how many millions of leaflets were dropped on the Palestinian communities to say, we're coming this way. You need to get that way. Here's a map. Here's where there's food and water and shelter and medical supplies and medical attention. I can tell you the Nazis didn't tell the Jewish people, this is how you escape the Holocaust. In Cambodia, Pol Pot and his government didn't say, hey, if you want to avoid 2 to 3 million people being slaughtered by us, this is how you go to safety. This is what Israel did. We made millions of text messages because we have 18, 19, 20-year-old boys and young men and women who, between wars, figures out every single phone number of every single mobile number in every single apartment building in Gaza. We know their name. We know what they do. We know who's in the family. And we can see if the phone is on. And we send them a text message. Then we call them. The text message said you had 10 minutes. Now you have 5. You've got to get out because there's terrorists shooting from your roof or from your basement. They're shooting missiles. We're about to attack and blow up your building. Please leave. Then 2 minutes before, if they're not having we shoot a rocket that it's called door knocking or roof knocking. It doesn't have an explosion. It doesn't have like dynamite or warhead in it. It's empty, but it hits the top of the building and it connects, it sticks, and it shakes the building. And now you know you have less time. Get out. We did everything humanly possible, more than the Americans, more than the Brits, more than anybody in history, to help, because we're not trying to kill civilians. We're not trying to kill anybody but somebody who's trying to kill us. And we'll lay out all of that. But the simple version is everybody in Gaza dead? Well, then it wasn't a genocide. We don't have, the international definition requires intention. We don't have any intention to wipe out the Palestinian people. We've offered them a state in 48, 67, 82, 90, 91, 96, 2000, 2008, 2009, and 2020 when Trump came up with the deal of the century. Here's a Palestinian state. How many ways can you offer people a state? They don't accept it. They come and attack you, and then we get accused of genocide? It's not right. It's a lie from the pit of hell, but we still have to deal with it. That's the short answer. Is there any others?
What are the one or two biggest obstacles for Jews when they hear the gospel to respond to the gospel?
He's asking what are the maybe two of the major obstacles that a Jewish person rejects the gospel, resists the gospel. What are those two? Limit to two? Okay. The first one is that their inner rabbi comes out and says, we don't believe that. Don't go there. Even if a person isn't even religious, it's like the enemy, starts causing them to hear their little inner rabbi. This is not. My father had this exact experience. He was raised Orthodox Jewish, right? He said, that's not us. That's not our team. We don't believe it. 2,000 years Jews don't believe it. We're not going to listen. The second is, even if they start to listen and they're like, actually, this is plausible. These prophecies do seem to line up. We often we love stories where people that we support tell us that they've been out sharing the gospel, but they only use the Old Testament, right? And they'll show Isaiah 53 to somebody, and they're like, I don't want to read the New Testament. Forget it. Obviously, that's about Jesus. I don't want to talk. Like, no, that's not. There's no New Testament here. It's just the Old Testament. That's just Isaiah. That's our team, right? And they're like, but that's all about Jesus. Where are you seeing Jesus? Just show me the word Jesus. No, Jesus. And then they realize, oh my gosh, that's my book. So then the next reason is, I don't want to get thrown off my team because our team doesn't believe this. And one of the worst things, aside from execution in the Old Testament, would be to be banished from the team. Because to be a Jew in the Middle East, without a community, without a city, without walls, it's a very dangerous, not just lonely, but it's a very dangerous place to be. And Jews don't want to be thrown out of the community.
Or out of their family.
Or out of their families. Start with the family, the synagogue, the community. And so one, it can't be true. But most Jews have not rejected the gospel. Most have not heard. So that's one of the big missions of how do we and the people we fund, how do we make sure that every single Jewish person and Gentile in the land of Israel and the region have at least heard the good news. Then we can start dealing with their resistance, including, there's another community of Jews who believe in Jesus and know exactly what you're going through. That's us, and we would love to help you in every way we can. We recently, just to say real quick, we recently met a young woman who had gone to Mike Huckabee and said, Ambassador, I'm trying to become a citizen of Israel, but my Jewish friends here in Israel are all mad at me because I believe in Jesus. What do I do? Mike Huckabee's like, that's not my department, helping you become a citizen of another country. You're going to need to maybe go talk to Joel. But this was a young woman, so Lynn and I talked to her together, but she had really resisted fellowship with Messianic believers, evangelical believers, because she didn't want to, even as a believer, she is a believer, but she still didn't want to be sort of outed. But it was causing her to really wither on the vine. And Lynn has gotten to invite her over for Bible study and just to encourage her right before we left for the States. So I would say those are the two biggest challenges, but there are
I would just
umpteen
add
others.
one more, just because I'm gonna. That is because
ahead.
I would say they don't know their own. They don't read the word. Even if a Jewish person wanted to become more Jewish, more religious, grow in their faith in the faith of Judaism, they don't go to the Bible. They go to the rabbinical commentaries. If you go to church, to synagogue, if you go to study, you study the Talmud and you study all these. Basically, since the time of Jesus, the Jewish leadership have added so many layers of commentaries and confusing circular reasoning. They've put a huge wall between the Jewish people and their own Bible, which tells them about their Messiah. So getting to share Isaiah 53 with a Jewish person, this is what they need to hear. They need to get back to their own Bible. So that's another huge thing.
It's
Yeah.
totally true.
Yeah, I want to know how we can be praying for you. Your son is in the IDF. We have a lot of spiritual warfare going on. We have this trip coming up and getting it all prepared. How can we be holding you up and interceding for you as a family, as an organization?
I definitely think spiritual warfare is the number one thing that we all deal with because it, as you all know, spiritual warfare is so insidious. It's one thing to have somebody coming at you, but it's another thing, now it's at your kids, and they don't even identify it as spiritual warfare. It's just a problem in school, or it's a relationship problem, or there's a marriage problem, and the enemy goes often at the weakest link in the chain, and so what's the famous line, right? A parent, especially a mom, I think is only as happy as their saddest child, and if
Which
the
is
enemy,
not true.
okay, well,
That's something you should not receive. Do not believe that.
Okay, well,
I have heard people say that, but I have seen that is not
yeah,
true.
we
That's
can
a
have
lie.
joy while we minister to our kids, but when the enemy is attacking, and we can see that they're attacking our kids or our grandkids, we have one on the way, so we're not there yet, but that is painful because you feel like, hit me, but don't hit them. And sometimes they're weaker in their faith. They may actually love the Lord, but they're not as prepared, and they're not as skilled in spiritual warfare. So I think that's the biggest thing, and because it's an exhaustion. The exhaustion of the war and all that's come with it. I mean, we're talking about thousands of missiles, which means tens of thousands of missile alerts. We've got them on our phone. It might not even come to your city, to your neighborhood, but you're getting an alert in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and you're up because you have to go to your bomb shelter, which in our house is one of our son's rooms. But for many people, they live in older buildings. You have to go downstairs to the basement or to another building. It's exhausting. And when you're exhausted, your immune system is off. You're either losing weight or you're gaining weight, right? I want to say that the 7 fat years are behind me, and we're moving toward the 7 lean years. It really, not sure I can say that that's happened yet. So that's not my testimony, but I wish it was. And you can also just be off guard. You can just lose. You can get sucked into temptations, all kinds of things. So I would say the spiritual warfare and endurance, resilience, not from a secular perspective, but from a believer. I think that's the biggest challenge this ministry faces. Obviously, we always need more resources, but mostly we need more prayer, and we need to make sure that nobody on our team ever gets picked off, because that's a high objective, right?
Yeah, we certainly would appreciate prayer for our Noah, who is in the IDF right now, that he would walk with the Lord and be a testimony to the people around him, and all the believing soldiers. Most believing soldiers are the only one in their unit that knows Yeshua, that knows Jesus, and so pray for them that they would be strong, that they would stay peaceful, that they would be bold and give answers to the people around them when they need hope, and that the Lord would just have their hearts just so rooted in him that they can't be shaken. I think that's the thing most parents in Israel would ask for is believing parents, is for the young people that are out there that are in the IDF or in school, and it's hard to be a little minority of believers wherever you go. And so just praying for the next generation to grow up and be discipled would be something. And like Joel said, we have rarely felt scared this whole time. There's been maybe 2 occasions where I literally felt afraid for my life, but it's more 2 things. It's grief. It's just sad. It's just sad every day to see bad news and to see the lies and to feel very isolated. And so finding our joy in the Lord, that's a huge prayer request, is just continuing to encourage yourself in the Lord and to not forsake the assembling together, because this is where we find our joy, is when we're together and we're in God's word and praying together. And then the other thing besides the fatigue and besides the sadness is, like Joel said, the fatigue, just praying for people to get some rest. Because you kind of, even though if you're not afraid, you're living in like your adrenaline and you're tensed up, you're living in anticipation all the time, and we're not really meant to live like that all the time. So I think our nervous system is sort of stuck in like an alert mode, and we need to breathe and relax. So
in our world for the last almost 3 years, it's not like we can just hunker in the bunker, as it were. We would just stay home, and our ministry is to go take food or supplies or encouragement and go to people that are, especially to our brothers and sisters who are trying to minister on those front lines, and they're facing even more danger than us in Jerusalem. That's where we live, in Jerusalem. So sometimes the Lord is saying, take this box of food or box of Bibles or whatever it is, and go to the Gaza border, to this particular congregation, and you're driving and you're watching the launches. And God gives grace. We used to think about those great heroes that would go into the World Trade Center as firemen, as policemen, first responders, and you think, who would just... Well, God has taught our team, not just us. Our staff, we all gave them like waivers, like basically said, meaning like, not waivers, we gave them, said, freedom. You do not have to go deliver humanitarian relief or anything else during this missile war. And everybody said, no, this is why we're here. But it is crazy to do these things. And then as a reporter, to go into Gaza, that's insane. To go in those terror tunnels, who does that? But God has given us purpose. That's been encouraging. And he gives us grace. I would say 2 other things real quick to pray for. One is, this Epicenter Summit and Tour. That I think 1,000 believers there would just be such a great witness. And again, we're building this relationship with the president and the prime minister and other foreign minister and others. They are so grateful that we're trying to do this. But now we got to go say, Lord, who are the people that are going to come? So I hope that will be all of you. And the last thing I would say is we don't have really time to get into it, but discipleship is the thing that's, we believe in evangelism, we're passionate about evangelism, but discipleship is what we get really excited about. And the Lord has been putting on our hearts, Joshua Fund, buying our first ever discipleship training center, an actual property in Israel. And that is a big undertaking, and we think we found the right place, but we got to raise the money before somebody else buys it. But if that happens, there's others. But we've been in a hard target search with the full support of our board. That's a really exciting thing. This has been a dream, particularly on Lynn's heart, since college, since we met and dated and got married. And it feels like this is the moment. So we're really excited about this, and you want to pray for something really crazy. We call these audacious prayers. Lord, open up doors that when you do it, no one will think, oh, Joel and Lynn, they're so creative. And no. If you do this, it's totally you. You get all the credit for it. So that's what we're excited about, some of those things.
Last question.
Okay, yes. Hi.
I hadn't heard hi. How are you?
Good.
What you guys do. So
Oh, thank you for coming. And sitting in the front row,
I heard that there's an opportunity to serve a Jewish community and Arab community during the tour. Is that true? What does that look like?
Yeah, so if you come on the Joshua Fund tour, every time we've ever done a tour, we've always made sure that there's a humanitarian relief day, or at least a half a day, part of it. You roll up your sleeves and we take you to a congregation, and you're part of their outreach to do a project. You're meeting real people, real Israelis, Jewish or Arab, it's mostly Jewish, but it is such a, I would say every single time we've done it, people say, that's the thing I got most excited about, because it got me out of the conference and out of just everything else was wonderful. I mean, but to touch people, to give someone a hug, I didn't speak Hebrew, but at least I got to feel like I was part of something, and I have a little clear sense of what these precious people are like and how desperately we want them to at least know how to get to heaven, right? We think of Luke 16, and we think of that story. I was just talking to the staff about it this morning, where Lazarus and the rich man, and I believe that's not a parable. I believe that's, Lazarus is named. Why name somebody in a parable, right? So, but that rich man, he's got a wonderful life, right, until he gets to hell, and then he's begging for mercy. Father Abraham is so gentle. He says, "Child, don't you remember all the good things you had in your life at that, when you're on earth?" But and he says, "But there's a great chasm fixed. We can't even get to there. Those of us who wish to." It says that because you would wish to go bring comfort to people in hell. This is an Old Testament picture of hell. I don't think you're going to be able to really see this in the New Testament era. But the point is, he says, well, if you can't, but he also, you can see the arrogance. He's like, command that Lazarus guy, send him over here to help me. But that can't happen. So he says, well, then send someone back to my father's household. I got 5 brothers. Don't let them come to this place of torment. And what does Father Abraham say? He says, they have Moses, they have the prophets, they have the word of God. And he said, no. But if someone goes back from the dead, they'll believe that. Father Abraham says, no, if they won't believe Moses and the prophets, they're not going to believe someone who rose from the dead. This is Jesus telling the story. And so I just say, that grips us. As passionate as we are about discipleship, go back to evangelism, our people have to know. They have to at least have heard. This is so important. And most of the church, broadly speaking, the Roman Catholics aren't trying to reach Jewish people for Jesus. The Greek Orthodox mostly aren't trying to do it. Many large denominations, this is not a thing. It's a pretty small, and even people who are Christian Zionists sometimes are so excited about political Israel. They're like, but don't worry, we'll never tell anybody in Israel about Jesus. Like, that's your plan? To stand before the Jewish Messiah one day and go, don't worry, Lord, I never told anybody about you. Well, that is not a conversation I want to have with the Jewish Messiah. So this is why we do what we do. And we're okay with it being a little band of warriors because, David was little and he only took 1 stone, and we like those stories. So anyway, thank you for asking.
Yep.
Okay. Pastor Bird, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. We're very grateful. Pastor Steve, wherever you are, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Joel, do you want to close in prayer?
Sure, happy to. Father, thank you so much. Thank you that there's still questions out there, but we thank you for everybody's interest, and we hope these things have been edifying, that you would use what we've shared to encourage, to inspire, to be able to learn, to keep learning, to keep praying, to keep giving, to keep going. And we thank you for what you're doing, that you haven't forgotten. Much of the church doesn't see it. They don't understand it. They're against it. That's not okay, but you're still on mission, and we're so grateful. And we just pray that this little team, that you would help us be healthy, strong, faithful, humble, and even when the odds are so overwhelming and it all seems so daunting, let us just say, great, that's another opportunity for you to show up and do the work that you want to do anyway, and that we just want to hear when we see you face to face, well done, my good and faithful servant. You were faithful in a few things. I'll now put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Or this is what we want to see. We know we don't deserve it. We're not prepared, equipped for this, but you've called us to this work, and we look forward to seeing new allies raised up to be part of this, and hopefully even to come next year. Lord, I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for Lance. Thank you for Lynn. Thank you for these pastors. And thank you for all who came out tonight. May they be blessed and encouraged. And may you keep stirring in their hearts the things that they've heard tonight that will drive them right back into your word and right back into your heart, saying, Lord, what do you want me to do? And we pray these things in the name of our great King who's coming soon, the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
On the back table.